Alright, in example number 5, we're going to start slowly getting away from the key of E. This is going to be a 2-chord sequence moving back and forth from E to D to make a 4-chord phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, let's take a look at what we have here. A couple things to talk about first. There's a couple challenges to this. The more we get away from the key of E, the more we're going to have less open E strings here and open A strings and such to pivot off from. For instance, in this example, when we're going off the E sus and E7 chord, we'll still be able to pivot off this open E. But when we move down to the D sus and D7, we're going to be pivoting off this A here on the 5th fret, which is the 5th of the chord. So just keep that in mind. Now we're going to break this down into 4 sections. So let's take a look at the first section. First move in the first section is going to be a thumb slap on open E, like that. And then we've got a thumb slap of an open A. And then we've got hammers of D and E on the 5th and 7th fret. And then we've got 2 double stop hammer-ons of A and D, and then B and E. So that would sound like this. That's the first section. Now the second section, our first move is a thumb slap of open E, and then hammers of D and E, and then 2 double stop hammer-ons of A and D, and G sharp and D. So that section would sound like this. Now a third section, our first move is going to be 2 successive thumb slaps on A, like that, and then a thumb slap of C, a hammer of a D, and then 2 double stop hammer-ons of G and C and A and D. So that section would sound like this. Now our fourth section and our last section, our first move is going to be this: a thumb slap of an A, thumb slap of a C, hammer of a D, and then 2 double stop hammer-ons of G and C and F sharp and C. So that section would sound like this. So let's play this whole thing real slow with the click. Alright, let's play this again with a drum machine, and I'm going to throw in some harmonic variations in my right hand. Now all I did there was change up the order of the double stops, and I also played some double stops that just simply sounded good against the chord. Now we're going to play that same example, and I'm going to mess around with the double stops some more, but I'm also going to change things up rhythmically and get more activity happening in both hands. In this next example, we're going to finally totally get away from the key of E, and we're going to move to a totally different key center. We're going to take that same 4-chord progression that we used in the previous example, except now we'll move it down to A sus to A7 and then G sus to G7. So let me play a little bit of this for you and then we'll talk about it. Alright, let's see what we have here. First thing I'd like to mention is that there's going to be very few open strings to pivot off from in this exercise. The only open strings will be when I do this triplet figure, like that. Right, let's break this down into 2 sections. In the first section, our first move is going to be a thumb slap of an A, and then a pluck of an A octave, and then our triplet figure, which I just talked about, is a slap on open A, and then hammers of D and E, like that. And then the last move, we have 2 double stop hammer-ons of G and D, and then G and C sharp. So that whole section sounds like this. Now in our second section, our first move is a thumb slap on D, then a hammer of an E, then a muted thumb slap, then a pluck of a C, then a hammer of a C sharp, and then thumb slap of an A, and then hammers of G and A. So that section sounds like this. Then you just move that whole thing down 2 frets and do it in the key of G. So let's play this again slow with the click. Alright, let's do that up to tempo with the click. This next example will move through 3 different chords, C7, B flat 7, and F7. And this will be a little bit tricky because it's in 5/4 time. There are also some double stop pull-offs in this, and you'll find that the further you go down with your left hand on the neck towards the nut, the harder it is to get a really beefy tone out of your hammer-ons. So let's try this with the click. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, let's take a look at what we have here. We're going to break this down into 4 sections. Now in our first section, the first move we have is a thumb slap of a C, and then we've got a pluck of a B flat, and then we've got a hammer of a C on the 5th fret, and then we've got 2 double stop hammer-ons of B flat and E flat, and G and C. So that section sounds like this. Now in our second section, our first move is a hammer of a C on the 3rd fret, and then a hammer of a C octave, and then a double stop hammer on of G and C, and then we've got a hammer of a C on the 3rd fret again, and then 2 successive thumb slaps on B flat. So that section sounds like this. Now in our third section, our first move is a thumb slap of an F, then we've got a pluck of an E flat, and then we've got a hammer of an F on the 3rd fret, and then 2 double stop hammer-ons of E flat and B flat, and E flat and A. So that section sounds like this. Now in our last section, our first move is a hammer of a B flat, and then we've got a hammer of a C on the 3rd fret, and then a double stop hammer on of E flat and A, and then you do a double stop pull off just to a muted sound, like that, and then you've got 2 successive thumb slaps on F. So that section sounds like this. Alright, let's play this slowly with the click. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, let's play this up to tempo now with the drum machine and some variations. In this next section, we're going to talk about playing bass lines and comping at the same time. Now, comping is just an abbreviated term for accompaniment. Now, we did a little bit of this back in the arpeggio section, where I played a simple bass line in my left hand, and then played some arpeggios on top in the right hand, like this. But what we're going to do now is play some double stops on top of the bass line, and we're going to do this in a number of different musical styles. Now this can work really well when you're playing with just a few musicians because the bass can actually fill up a lot more of the musical spectrum. For instance, you can play the role of keys and bass at the same time, or guitar and bass at the same time. So now let's try this with kind of a Latin bossa nova feel, and we'll do it over a C7 sus chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me break this down and show you what we're doing here. Now in the left hand, we're just going back and forth between a C and a G, like this. But it's a little bit hard to hear when you're playing it by itself because a lot of the notes don't fall right on the beat, they're anticipated. But when you play both parts together, it all kind of falls in place. So that's what we're doing in the left hand. Now what we're doing in the right hand is just playing a double stop of F and B flat, like this, to help make up the C7 sus chord. So now let's do this with the click. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's take that same example now and expand the harmony in both hands, both the right hand double stops and the left hand parts. This time we'll start with C minor 9 and then go to D half diminished and then G7 sharp 11. This will get a lot more activity happening in both hands. So let me play it